Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited about today's guest. She's called Izka González, and she's a LinkedIn top voice. And I mean, she's an expert in job search, career coaching. So I'm excited to have her here. She's a career coach at the Hiring Revolution, and she's going to give us a lot of information and tips in terms of international recruiting, right? So let me just say hi.
Hi, hi, Gabby.
Hi, Iska. So nice to have you here. It's a pleasure for us. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation. And I have a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions for today. But okay, let me start with this quote, that I always start with a quote. And this one
Hmm.
is anonymous, and it says, international recruiting is like building a bridge between talent, opportunity, and culture. So I think it was great and is very appropriate, for our context today.
Yeah,
Now,
that's good.
before we start with the questions, tell us about you, who you are, what did you
Of
do?
course. Thank you. Well, I'm originally from Mexico City and I live in Cleveland, Ohio since 5 years ago. I studied international business and I was just for a less than a year in that area for a specific job with a telecommunications company. Then I moved to human resources specifically for recruiting and selection. And from that moment, I started my career in talent acquisition that is now 15 years. I've been always working, or I was working, always for international companies. I work for Johnson Controls, Eden, Siemens, Booking.com, NBC Universal, just to mention some of those. So it's like different type of industries, always from the recruiting and selection perspective. But at the same time, I was always very curious, not just to be in talent acquisition, but to understand how human resources work, training, development, and the business. So as I always say, like talent acquisition is my passion. I started to create content specifically on LinkedIn last year because at the end of 2021, I experienced a burnout, so it was very important for me to start sharing with people, like create this awareness of how important it is to just enjoy your job, but at the same time find this work-life balance because it is possible. I was having that work-life balance, and when I forgot to set limits, I experienced that burnout. So it's always like I would say like a co-responsibility between the company and the employee, of course. So that's how I started, and now I started my own consultancy company, which is the Hiring Revolution. I'm a
Yay.
LinkedIn creator as well, and then this year, LinkedIn named me LinkedIn Top Voice in the job search and careers category. So I'm representing Mexico on LinkedIn.
Yay! Congratulations. I'm so
Thank you.
happy about it. Really, congratulations. You know, that's a milestone. We have here we have Pipi Torre. He says, greetings, Gavi and Iska from Guadalajara, Jalisco. So
Hola,
nice.
Pepe.
Thank you so much. Pipi, I said Pepe. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you as a guest. And if you have any questions, just let us know. So, Iska, okay, before we continue, tell us a little bit about the Harlem Revolution. What did you do there? What is it about?
Yeah, well, I'm basically creating content in terms of talent acquisition, but I also have like sessions of career coaching for people who's like actively looking for a job, or they are like wanting to change jobs. And at the same time, there's some companies that are looking for my services to help them with talent acquisition itself.
Mhm.
Conferences, I've been like a keynote speaker for universities and also for some companies that want to train their teams in terms of talent acquisition best practices.
I love it.
So that's what I do.
I love it. Okay, I will share in the comments your LinkedIn profile and also the
Thank you.
link for your Instagram account. Okay, so
Perfect.
be
Thank you. Thank you.
absolutely. Now let's start with the questions. So let's see. Here we have the first. Can you share with us some career paths that tend to have more international opportunities?
hmm I think in general, honestly, the sky is the limit no matter what you study, no matter what you're working on. The
Mm-hmm.
thing is that, first of all, if you want to have an international career, of course, English first. You need to be able to speak English, and depending on how wide and how big you want to grow, then perhaps you might need to speak different languages. There are some people that tell me that they want to work in Europe, like because of the companies I worked for. At some point, I was in charge of recruiting for Latin America, the United States, and I was working as well with Europe, Middle East, and South Africa. And there was always a candidate that was looking for an opportunity to move to Europe. In Europe, you have to speak at least 4 or 5 languages. So it depends on what is your purpose in life. Honestly, that's something that I will always suggest. Find first your purpose, define what you would like to do, and then, like, if we are talking about opportunities, for example, to work remotely, definitely technology. Almost all the I would say functions in corporate environment today, you need to have developed technology skills. You have to embrace artificial intelligence. You have to be able to be productive no matter where you're based on, and that's what is going to help you with an international career. Definitely, you might need to have a mentor, a coach, and be very clear that for an international company, what you need to do all the time is present results.
Yeah.
Find this balance. So it's more than just because I study something or because I'm doing something in particular. Having an international career requires a lot of commitment, discipline, and organization.
I love it. Okay, okay. Wonderful. Excellent. Now, what about your I mean, what's your advice for someone looking to transition into an international role? So you were talking about responsibility, commitment. So what would be that advice? So I work in a national company, I work in my country, but I'm looking for, you know, an international role.
hmm I think the first thing is to understand the culture that you're interested to work with. Because if we are like, and I suppose that most of your audience is also from Latin America, our
Mm-hmm.
culture is very different than the United States, for example, or even Europe. We tend to be, like warm people. Like at work, we might kiss and hug, but when you come to the United States, people barely say hi. And in Europe, it's different. Like it's only about cultural differences. So you have to adapt. It doesn't mean that you have to change who you are or change your nature. In my case, for example, honestly, I know, like, I love how you speak, by the way, but I don't. I'm not obsessed with improving, for example, my accent. To me, the most important thing is that you can communicate and that
Yeah.
you can share with people your ideas, your results, your processes. If we're working about, like if we're talking about work environment. So if you
Mm,
want to transition from a local or national role into international, first of all, understand the culture, and then again, it has to do with perhaps the communication,
mhm.
politics, because at the end of the day, if you
Yeah.
want to grow and transition from one place to the other, you will need to talk with people from different countries. You have to prove that you can deliver results,
Yeah.
mainly when we're talking about international companies. So it's a lot to take into consideration. That's why it's important, of course, to have your purpose and see what you want to do, what you are able to. If you want sacrifice, I would say, because it is tough sometimes when you are adapting to the culture.
Great. And have you, now that you're living in the States and you are, in this hiring context, I mean, how can a person who has never worked in an international company, I mean, what should they focus on in terms of culture? Like this interaction with colleagues or the interaction with coworkers, or it's more about the language and the vocabulary? Is it about body language? what do you think is like key, especially because you're hiring? I mean, you're in the recruiting, industry, especially in job interviews. I mean, if this is the, well, I don't know if I will ask you this question later, but anyways, if I'm attending a job interview in English and this is the first or second time, what would you recommend them? Like, what would be your advice in this case?
Mhm. I think for the interview and in general, when you're trying to adapt, everything has to do with active listening. You need to listen to what people is telling you, because something that happens a lot with people from Latin America is that sometimes we feel offended. We feel offended because people in the United States is very straight to the point. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean, and I, by the way, guys, I just met Gabby no long ago, so we didn't plan this, but I think perhaps in the past she mentioned things like this. So when you're working with people from the United States, they tend to be cold, straight to the point, direct. In Latin America, no matter the country, we tend to use a lot diminutives, and we have like this chit chat going on all the time, and we want to talk about our families.
Yeah.
While people from Europe or from the United States and Canada is more about, well, how are you? How was your weekend? Fine, let's
That's
move
it.
forward, and we have to talk about business because
Mhm.
time is money. It's true. So I think it's everything has to do when we're talking about adapting to the culture with listen first, like look how people is acting. And
Mhm.
again, it doesn't mean that you have to change, but if you have any question, ask. I just want to share something really quick that happened to me. I was working in a company where we were traveling a lot. We went to Europe, we went to the United States, and I was with a coworker from Brazil. We used to have like big lunch, and here in the United States it's just a sandwich and a salad. So we're very used to bring our toothbrush and brush our teeth in the bathroom. So we were like so natural brushing our teeth, and people was looking at us like that's gross. We're like, what is happening? Like they don't brush their teeth. Years later, I was talking with my husband because he's been here in the United States for a very long time. He's like, we don't do that. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that we don't brush our teeth, but it's like because we have such a very like small, quick lunch, we don't have to brush our teeth at work. Those little details are things that if you want, maybe there's a blog, maybe there's some research that you can do online, but it's
Yeah,
also part of your experience adapting, listen, and be open. You have to be open to those differences and not be offended.
I love it. I'm gonna use your example, of course, with your station, but I'm going to use your example in class because,
Please
yeah,
do.
yeah, we always talk about that too. Like for example, in emails, when people send emails, we in Spanish. I mean, Spanish native speakers or Latin, I think. Um, uh, from Latin languages, we speak a lot and we write a lot and we write, like very long emails and we explain everything in the email and all the details. And then you receive like, got it. Will do. Sure.
Thank you.
Totally. What?
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks. And it's like, come on. I spent 3 hours writing this email and I received thanks. Right.
Yes,
So,
don't be offended. But it's important for the interview as well. Something that happens a lot with candidates that are not native speakers is that sometimes they don't catch exactly what the person is asking. So it's
yes.
very common that you don't understand. Please don't start answering what you think they ask. If anything, try to rephrase the question and make sure that you understood what they are asking. Because that's typically when the candidates are missing the point. They don't know what to say. They just start like this monologue. And then, of course, they fail the interview because they didn't get the question.
Yeah, just ask. I mean, just
Please.
ask. Rephrase the question, just to know if you're clear on what you're asking. I love it. Okay, now let's take a look at the next question. How can mastering, in this case, business English, because that's, like our context, how can mastering business English improve one's chances of securing an international position? Why would this be, helpful, important?
I would say at this point is critical. Like the type of companies where I was working for, we received tons of applications daily from people in Latin America. And one of the main issues in most of them, no matter if they were for engineer, sales, marketing, communication, at some point, because those were roles that were going to work with native speakers, English native speakers, at some point, the interviews, initial interview or the main interview with the hiring manager had to be in English because the entire role and activities were going to, like speak English because you have to communicate in English. So you need to practice, you need to learn, you need to. I think something that happens a lot is that people is afraid to make mistakes in general. So when you are learning a different language, you need to forget about it. You are going to make mistakes. We make mistakes all the time, no matter the language, no matter
Yeah.
what you do. Embrace the mistakes. Of course, there's different type of mistakes, but if you realize that you just need to communicate, just start talking. My recommendation all the time, because I did that in the past, is try to live in English all the time. TV shows, music, your applications, everything in your phone, think in English. Start
Wow.
doing as much as you can. Because
Mm,
there's always like, like I cannot pay a class. Well, there's Duolingo. There's your amazing free content, like follow Gabby on Instagram. And
mhm.
there's so many things that you can learn. But it's definitely the first step to start communicating for an international company.
I agree. Can you listen to me?
I can listen to you, but your picture is
Okay,
frozen.
let me turn off my camera and, well, I don't
I
know.
can perfectly. I can hear you. It happens sometimes with the internet, but I
Yeah.
can hear you.
Okay, but let's continue. No worries. Look at this question from
Pepe.
what does a professional recruiter do when he perceives that the candidate is highly qualified but does not speak English? How does it help him?
I think it depends on the requirements of the role. Because what happens most of the times is that recruiters are willing to help and move candidates to the next stage. The thing is that recruiters are not the ones that make the final decision for a hiring. It's the hiring manager itself, or sometimes there are like very specific requirements. If it's a very technical position, sometimes the recruiter will say something to the hiring manager like, help me understand what's more important for you. Like, what are the really non-negotiable technical skills that the candidates might need to have?
Okay.
Typically, typically in a tough market, in a complex position, they are going to prioritize the technical skills because English is something that at the end of the day you can practice. Of course, at least if it's a role that requires people fully bilingual, then it might be like if at least you are intermediate and you can communicate and you make mistakes, you will have the opportunity to practice. But if it's someone that doesn't speak English at all, then it's going to be really hard for that person to move into the process. So it depends on the requirements of the role. But now I cannot hear you, Gabby.
I love that. Can you see me
I
now?
hear you. I see you and I hear you now.
Yay, I'm back. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the requirements, right? It depends on the requirements. Now, is there
Yeah.
something that recruiters, because that's like, I think that's the last part of the question. Is there something the recruiter could do to help them? I mean, I suppose like as a recruiter, I mean, if you cannot, like offer the position because maybe it's, like an IT position and they really require like an advanced level of English because they're interacting with customers and international stakeholders, etc. What would you do if you notice that they are really good but they need to improve? I mean, it's like, would you recommend them to take a course?
I used to do that all the time because, for example, one of the companies I work for and I loved it, it's Booking.com. Booking.com is one of the most international companies that I work for. Like
Yes.
the website itself is open in more than 40 languages, and it was a real international culture where the only way to communicate was in English. No matter if you were in Latin America, there was always people from the United States, from Europe, from Asia, and we had to speak English. So there were a lot of good candidates that applied, but they were not able to communicate. They could read, they could understand, but they could not speak. So at that
Mm,
time, what we always did was to say, like, look, your background in terms of technical skills is really good. Please start studying English. Like, if you don't have the income now to take a session or private classes, try to do it with all the free resources you have. And once you are sure that you can speak fluently, come back and apply again. Because we could, most of the recruiters, when you have a system, you can set notes like this candidate is really good technically, but maybe the English is not the best. And I had a few examples of people that few years later apply and we hire them. I remember always a case in Dominican Republic. So it's true, like there is a database and there is like this approach from really good recruiters that they exist. There's good recruiters, not the world is not just about recruiters. But
mm.
that's something you cannot pass someone that doesn't meet the requirements. But you can encourage people to continue practicing.
I love it. Okay, okay. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. That makes things easier, especially for those applicants because, well, the point is that, I mean, why do you apply, right? If you know that in the description, right, in the job description, it says advanced level of English, or if you're in the industry and you know that a high level is required and you don't have a high level, it's like, why are you applying? But if they do, then, it's necessary, so they don't feel frustrated because that's what happens most of the time. It's like they don't have the level, they apply, they get frustrated, and it's, like a cycle.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, awesome. I love that. Let's just move to the next question, and this is: are there any certifications, training programs that you recommend for candidates interested in international roles?
You mean
Uh,
from the English perspective or in general?
Um, general. I mean,
Mhm.
anything that could help people who are interested. It could be in terms of their English, in terms of their interview skills, in terms of, public
Mhm.
speaking.
Yeah, I think in general, like if you are, it depends on the level that you are at this moment applying for. If
Okay.
you are like out of college or if you are out of school and you're looking for a training program, try to learn as much as you can in general. Definitely communication skills, presentation skills, that's really important because sometimes it's like, okay, you're really good at what you're doing, and there's a chance that your manager is going to ask you to present to a director, to an executive board, to someone. So you need to feel confident presenting. These actually are one of the what I'm sharing with you are the trainings that I took years ago in the companies that I was working for. Most of them were provided by the companies, but in my case, for example, just after a year that I started working in recruiting, I decided that I really loved what I was doing. So I wanted to have more knowledge in terms of human resources. So I had a diploma with Cambridge in order to understand better how human resources work. And I had like all the information from different areas that later I ended up interacting with. So
I
if,
love.
if you're an engineer, there's a chance that depending on the area you're working on, you might need to have a certification as an auditor. You might want to learn something specifically for IT, for example. No matter what you do, as I said earlier, you really need to have like this willingness to work with technology, with
Yeah.
artificial intelligence, like at least understand how ChatGPT works because it can help with your work. So I think in terms of English, definitely TOEFL or at least a Cambridge certification or any other certification in
Yeah.
English. If you cannot make the certification or you cannot pay, at least try to reach that level if you are doing like a free test. But at least it's called, I think, between B1 or C1 is the level that the companies are going to ask. There are some companies that actually request that you bring like the certification itself that shows that you can speak. But in most cases, it's just an interview where you can actually speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely agree. Um, some people, I mean, they don't. attend job, they don't apply because they don't have a certification. And if the certification is not a requirement in the job description, just do it. It's like,
Yes,
I
please.
mean, sometimes people are certified and they're not able to communicate effectively. It's like
Yeah.
a certification doesn't determine, like your level and the effectiveness of your communication. And recruiters know that, right? Some people say they are advanced and they are not. Some people say they are pre-intermediate, but they are really good, at speaking. So, you know I love that. Pepe says, thank you very much, Izka, for your answer. Awesome. Okay, so presentations, English. I think another important skill is this, interacting in meetings. Well, depending on, like the person's industry, the position that they are going to have in the company, right? But preparing for meetings, this interaction with colleagues, with stakeholders, with customers is important too.
Yes, for sure.
What about this one? Do you feel okay? So now we're going to talk about the glass ceiling. Guys, if you're watching the recording and if you have any questions, let us know in the comments and we will reach out to you later. So look at this one. Do you feel that non-native English speakers face barriers or a glass ceiling in international recruitment? If so, how can they overcome this situation?
Mhm. Mhm. I think, well, it depends. In general, glass ceiling, it's a little bit more referred to women
Mhm.
when they don't have an equal payment in companies. Perhaps it can do at some point with your language skills, but this is more like a social situation. Because I mean, I don't want to be very political here, but it's true. Like, unfortunately, most of the companies are mainly male in terms of the director levels. But in general, like more than payment and opportunities, I think there's a taboo when we're talking in Latin America of English. From the previous questions you were asking, I've been thinking like some people apply because they say at the end of the day, sometimes because it's true, some companies ask you to bring like a very advanced level of English, and at the end of the day, you're not using it. So
No.
it's true, it can be. However, if you are applying for an international company and you see that they are using it, then you need to bring the skill. If it comes to a decision that the company has to do when hiring someone,
Mhm.
and it happens that there's another candidate that is a native English speaker, and it's like you are in this final stage with a non English speaker, and the
Yeah.
other person could communicate better, yeah, perhaps the decision is going to select the native English speaker. But I
Wow.
think it's a little bit more complex than that, and it has to do with a lot of social situations. But with this, I think the main message also for not just your audience, but anyone that gets to see this session is embrace the fact that you have to speak English if you want to be part of an international opportunity, if you want to learn, if you want to interact. Like, networking is amazing. The reason why we're here is because we got to know each other and we can both speak English.
Yes.
So I think it's try to think in that way. It's the amount of opportunities you're going to have both personally and professionally. Just start speaking, please. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid.
Just do it. I mean, do it.
Just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, please.
That's what we always say, to people in our speaking club. Is like, I mean, you don't have to wait till you're ready. We are never ready. I don't feel
Hmm.
ready, right? So we have to do it, right? Now, can you share some resources or communities that have been instrumental in your language learning journey? I mean, when you were learning English in this, context in which you are, Are there any communities or courses or resources that have been helpful in
Hmm.
improving or helping you improve your English?
Yeah, I think I'll go back a little bit. Like as I mentioned to you, I was born
Mm-hmm.
in Mexico City, born and raised in Mexico City, and I attended a public school that
Okay.
I never had like English classes. I started to learn English in middle school because my mom was making a huge effort to pay a private school. After that, I was like everyone, and this is why I'm telling you, don't be afraid. I was like, yeah, maybe I'm not speaking the best from my house. It was all the time like trying to listen to music in English at least. But the
Yeah.
advantage is that if you have access to internet, you can do everything. If you want to improve your English skills in terms of business vocabulary, LinkedIn is one of the best platforms to do it. Not because we are having a LinkedIn Live, but because you have access to people that is speaking or writing in English and that perhaps is not their main language. So
Yeah.
you will see that there's going to be, of course, some grammar mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps there's something that you just don't understand because there's also an advantage with LinkedIn. You have the translation automatic button. I think most of the social platforms nowadays have that. But with LinkedIn, it's very easy because you are reading. And now what you have also with LinkedIn is the articles. If you go to a newsletter, if you follow a newsletter, let's say in Spanish, that you really like, but you have to force yourself to speak English. If you are on your desktop version of LinkedIn, you
Uh,
can click, and there's now the opportunity for the article to be translated automatically, and you can listen to the article. So you are going to listen to the same information that you already read in Spanish in English. So
mm-hmm.
that's for free. There's nothing you have to pay. And also, I will say like nowadays it's like the moment of social media. TikTok, Instagram, Discord. There's an application that I definitely recommend. It's called Fishbowl. Fish Bowl.
Fish bowl. Okay, let me
Fishbowl.
Google it here to share with
Yep.
people.
Fishbowl is blue. You will see it's blue and actually has like a little fish as the logo.
Okay.
Fishbowl belongs to Glassdoor. And I think there's some content in Spanish, but the good thing about Fishbowl is that you have audio events in English, and they have really good guests. It's not like LinkedIn that you can have your own audio session. Here is something that specifically, I will say, Fishbowl curates for people to listen to, and it's always related to business because Fishbowl belongs, as I mentioned, to Glassdoor. Glassdoor is
Ah,
the website where you can read, like uh, comments, reviews from employees about the company. So it's absolutely business oriented and it's for free and you have a community and the best part is that it's anonymous. um that's Glassdoor, yeah. And Fishbowl, it has to be a little bit yeah, there you go. Fishbowl by
this one.
Glassdoor.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
cool.
There you go. That's the color is blue, and it's
Okay.
amazing because you have there. It's Fishbowl because it's like where the fish live. They call them bowls. So there's like one for moms at work, students, recent graduates, artificial intelligence technology, salaries. So anything you want to practice is here for free.
Okay, we have to
I
record
love it.
an Instagram video, Instagram reel for this and a video.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
like very easy tutorial. I always share, but sometimes I'm like, why people stuck here? Some people now it's joining Fishbowl that I know, and we see each other in audio sessions. But it's honestly is one of the best apps that I can recommend for someone that wants to practice.
I love it. Thank you so, so much. I
Sure.
absolutely appreciate it. I will use it and recommend it too. Thank
Yeah,
you so
it's beautiful. You will
much.
like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, here we have Pepe. He says, as a way to inspire people, can you two share with us, Gabby and Iska, how long did it take you to have this fluent and clear English?
No,
Okay,
you're so sweet, Pepe. You go first, Gabby.
you go first. Well, I don't know. In
Okay.
my The point is that I'm a teacher, right? So I've been working on, like my grammar and my pronunciation, um, a lot, right? I've been teaching for more than 15 years. So I've been learning while teaching. I mean, when I started some years ago, when I started, I started at university, and I was, like learning and teaching at the same time. But I can say, I mean, to be able to communicate, I could say, I don't know, like 5 years. And then of course in university it's like we studied, like grammar and pragmatics and pronunciation and phonetics and blah blah blah, right? um but I don't know, I think that in learning English, or well, I mean languages in general, or how to play an instrument, etc., it's like it's so different, people have so different learning processes. So comparing your process with another person's process in terms of time, in terms of resources, right? I think it's not fair. Yeah, because we all have different, learning styles. In my case, I don't like reading in English. I always say that I don't like it. I love reading in Spanish, but then I love listening in English, right? So it's like, you need to learn to understand your learning process so you can really improve. And I think that is what takes your English to the next level, when you understand what works for you and then you start doing it, more often. So,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah, I agree. And I think from the moment I start learning English, one of my, I would say, is an advantage, I think, is that my listening is very good. And since I can understand, then I can reproduce. I remember all the
Yes.
time in my English classes, my best rates were in listening, more than grammar, and sometimes even more than speaking. I have these. That's why I'm a recruiter, because I can listen very well. So I think from the moment I started studying, it might be also around 3 years. 3 years to be able to speak and communicate. But my secret, Pepe, is that I marry a non-Spanish speaker. Like my husband, my husband and I speak English all the time because his main, I would say his main language perhaps is a mix of English and Bosnian because he's from Bosnia. So we speak English to each other. Our kids speak English, Spanish. Well, my baby not yet, but he understands because we're talking all the time. So my son, he's 3.5, and he speaks Spanish, English, and Bosnian. So I think it depends. I totally agree with you. It depends on your own journey, like the skills that you have. There's some I know people that's been learning for years and they just don't feel comfortable speaking. They
Yeah.
just can't pronounce certain words. And we see it with our son. There's
Yeah.
some words that it's really hard for him to pronounce because there's so many languages that we're using in the house that
Hmm.
he starts to be, it's normal, I guess. You get confused, and the
Of
way we
course.
move our tongue is completely different. But
Yes.
overall, if we think about it, we both have a path of 15 years. In my case, it's 15 years working in international companies where you have to be forced if you want to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always very motivated to be noticed, and I wanted to have exposure, and I wanted to be an overachiever. So I was like, I don't care if I make a mistake. If I have
Yeah.
the opportunity to talk to someone, I will. So it's like from music, and then of course the moment I met my husband, it improved because I wanted to talk to him. So I had to improve, and he always helps me and he corrects me. So I will say you have the opportunity to talk or to have like a class at some point with someone that is native speaker, definitely is going to complement your classes or whatever you are using to learn, and it's going to help.
Yep, yep. Intonation,
Hmm.
rhythm, musicality, it also helps, right? And
Yeah.
I think another important issue here is limiting beliefs.
Oh yeah.
Um, so some people are like, oh, I live in Latin America, I've never been in the States, or I'm going to wait till I make some money and I live in the States for 3 months or a year so I can improve. I've never been in the United States. the first time that I, moved, or that I traveled, was to come to Chile. I'm from Venezuela, by the way. And it was, like moving from Venezuela to Chile, and it is still South America. So I don't think like I have to live in an, English speaking
Yeah.
country to learn. I don't think that's necessary. But there are a lot of limiting beliefs, right? And a lot of people have these ideas, right? Some people say that if I'm under over 35 years old, I'm not learning anymore, or I don't know, if I'm not in contact with, or in my work, if I don't have coworkers who speak English, I mean, obviously you need to create, you know, your context, right? Create situations in which you practice, right? And you use the language. But yeah, working on limiting beliefs is also very important, I
I
think.
agree.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Pepe, if you have any questions, let us know. And finally, this is the last one. Are there specific soft skills that can give non native English speakers an edge in international settings?
I think it has to do with, it's nice that we can connect this previous question with this one because it has to do with confidence. I think it
Mhm,
has to do with attitude. When we're talking from the recruiting perspective, we always talk about this triangle, this knowledge, skills, and attitude. You have to take this into consideration when you're going to move candidates to the next stages, and this is something that you can have a conversation with the hiring manager. That's why it's so important to understand the profile that you're looking for. You need to understand what are the non-negotiable requirements that typically tend to be very technical. Certain things,
mhm,
depending on the level of the position, that you can really not pass in the candidates. But then this part of skills and attitude is knowledge, skills, and attitude. What can you work with people? You
mhm.
can definitely learn, so you can have knowledge at some point. The
Yes.
skills is something that you can improve, but the attitude, if you don't have the attitude, there's nothing we can do to help because you
Mhm.
need the attitude to learn.
Yeah.
So in the triangle, the base is the attitude. So sometimes it's true. I mean, there again, it's like this can be like a real topic of discussion for a lot of people. Because in on LinkedIn, for example, there's some people that says, let's hire for attitude. Yes, you can hire someone that has great attitude because sometimes the same hiring managers tell you, you know what, I know this is a very hard skill to find. People is not going to have it, or this certification, or this particular experience working with this program, machine, market. It's really hard. But if you bring someone that has the attitude and is willing to learn, is a coachable person, is someone that is open to receive feedback and implement the
Uh,
feedback that we're providing, then
mhm,
I can work with that type of people. So that's, I think that's the background of why some people say that it's nice or it's good when you hire for attitude. So when it comes to hiring
mhm,
to be part of big companies or companies that are about to grow and become international,
mhm,
definitely you need to consider as your soft skill package having good attitude and communication. I think sometimes we we don't think of the importance of communicating correctly. Most of the problems in every single company come
mhm.
from bad communication
Yeah.
because we assume that my coworker said this thing, maybe he wanted to say this. Why are you assuming? You
Yeah.
can ask.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main thing. You need to ask, you need to improve your communication skills, you need to have good attitude, and then that is definitely going to help you with your career.
Absolutely. I love it. Okay. Excellent. And what about okay, so this is just so if you receive a person, right? And this person is, I don't know, like pre-intermediate, upper intermediate, they got the necessary skills, but I mean, you know that that is something. I mean, this person needs to improve, like 20% of their English, 30%. Would you hire, or recruiters in general would hire this person if the person commits to learning and improving, their English. Because
Mhm.
sometimes people who prepare for job interviews, they are like, okay, should I say that I'm working on my English, that I'm improving my English, that I'm taking classes? Would you consider this necessary during the interview or not?
Mhm. I think it has to do with the type of company that you're applying for. If it's a perhaps if it's a national company that is not really, or a family business that is not really using 100% the English, and that it's more like a nice to have the skills to work at some point with potential growth, and someone is going to talk with vendors or critical clients in different countries that they need to speak English, maybe
Hmm.
there's a little bit more of time, patience, and resources for the people to understand, to learn, because who's going to pay for those classes?
Of
Sometimes,
course.
and I'm always very open. People who follow me, they know I say the things the way they are. Who's going to pay for that? Because it's part of a budget when you're talking about a company. Now,
Of course.
the thing is, recruiters are going to support candidates all the time. As I said, I know there's bad recruiters, but this is not a rule.
Hmm.
The person who's more interested in closing a position is a recruiter, because
Of
we
course.
have metrics, we have targets, we have KPIs. And if I'm presenting a candidate that I know it has technical skills, I'm going to push to hire this person. The
Hmm.
thing is, who's going to make the final decision is the hiring manager.
Yes.
So if the hiring manager is someone that is not speaking English, and no matter how much you share that you're taking classes and that you're using Duolingo and that you're reading all the books and dictionaries in the world, if the manager asks you something in the interview and you don't understand what this person asked and you respond something totally different, even
Yeah.
after two, three tries, trial to explain the question again, then unfortunately
Of
there's a
course.
big chance that the manager will say, no matter how much you really want to try, how long is it going to take you to improve to the point that we can have a conversation and a meeting to see your advances in your role, in your work. So I think it has to do with the level of English that the position is really going to use on a daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
and how flexible is the manager, because there's so many people that are native speakers and they're like, okay, at least I kind of understand, you know what, we can use Google. I should mention, by the way, really quick, that there's now technology, and I learned that on LinkedIn the other day. There's some technology that is helping people, for example, in call centers or customer service, to help a little bit with the accent, because we know, like, sometimes you're working with people from India and you're like, oh my goodness, I really don't understand anything. Then it's kind of correcting almost at the same time the pronunciation, so at least you can understand. So
Simultaneous.
that's my point when I say let's embrace technology, let's embrace artificial intelligence, because at some point there's so many tools now that can help us to translate,
Mm-hmm.
that our managers very open to do that. I have experience with hiring managers that, you know what, we are going to use Google Translate because the candidate meets the technical requirements. So we will see how we manage to communicate. Let's
Yeah.
hire this person. It happens, but it's not all the time.
Of course. Awesome. Okay. Well, this was the last question. And of course, the quote again: international recruiting is like building a bridge between talent, opportunity, and culture. It's been a pleasure, of course, for us to have you here. And people, I'm going to share with you here in the chat. Izka's LinkedIn profile and also her Instagram account. So if you want to reach out to her, feel free to DM her if you have any questions or any comments. Here is her Instagram, and I mean, I love the content you share. So
Thank you.
let me share the link here very quickly. Oh, Pepe says, something that is very useful to me is listening to people like you who speak native Spanish
Hmm.
and learn English. Its pronunciation is very easy to follow. That is why these spaces are very enriching. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks
you,
to
Pepe.
you.
Still
Thank you
try
so
to force your ears when you're listening to native speakers of those.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I mean, both, I mean, practicing with native speakers is necessary because you will most probably have, meetings with native speakers
Mm-hmm.
and native speakers too, because you will have both, right? I mean,
Where we
I
can
think,
communicate.
yeah, exactly. So I think there as well, actually, there are more non-native English speakers than
Yep.
actual, native speakers. So you most probably will interact with both, right? So you need to get used to both. Some people are like, I'm just going to listen to natives. Some others are like, I just going to listen, to non-natives, but you have to do both, right? So you can train your ear and, make things, easy for yourself. Okay. So well, Iska, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope all your audience is willing to continue practicing their English. Don't be afraid. There's people who are going to say that our accent is in the way. It's not true. If you're talking with someone that wants to understand and that is willing to communicate, doesn't matter. You have to do it. Just talk.
Yeah, it is a two-way street, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're open to share our ideas, but the other person should be open to listen to us too, right? So thank you. Thank you so much for your
A
time. I
real
absolutely
pleasure, Gabby.
thank you. Guys, if you have any
Thank you
questions,
so
let it
much.
in the comments and we will reach out to you later on. Thank you, Iska. Thank you so much for your
Thank you,
time.
guys.
If you guys have any question, let us know. Thank you, Pepe, for
Pepe.
being here. And remember, you can network, right? There is a section here with comments, and you will find people who were live and people who were connecting. So you can do some networking there too. Okay. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank
See
you.
you next Wednesday,
Thank you,
guys. If
Gabby.
you have any questions, let us know. Thank you, Iska. Thank you so much.
Thank you.